OMAKASE, the life and words of author M. Kieran. If this is our first time meeting each other, let me give you a quick introduction. My name is Max. I write books for a living. My pronouns are they, them, and in case you're wondering what the title of the podcast is, it is a Japanese saying that means I leave it up to you. I talked about it on the very first episode of the podcast, though I admit it's been a little bit, so I figured I would give you a reminder. I began this podcast with the desire to create the best podcast that I could. And I put in this little box all the things that I loved the most. Sharing my creative process, answering your questions, and inspiring in you the desire to write, especially through weird prompts and writing exercises. And that right there is the way the show works. The first part is about me, my week, my creative process. The second segment is 2 viewer questions, and the last one is a prompt. And so, with all of that stuff out of the way, it's been a little while since the last time we talked. Also, excuse any sounds in the background that you may hear. My 2 chinchillas are waking up a little earlier than usual, but that's okay. If you're wondering as to why there was an episode missing, you should follow me on Twitter because I post updates there. Though, I mean, let's be honest here, I'm sure that most of you can guess as to why I missed the week of the podcast. If you turn over to the roulette wheel that effectively displays the reasons as to why my responsibilities may have to go on the back seat, we have half of the wheel is life events outside of my control, and the other half of the wheel is Max getting sick. So if you want to just imagine me just spinning that wheel, a little bit of both, actually. The biggest one, and if you saw me on Twitter, you would have heard, I got really sick. And it's funny because if I think back to the bonus episode that I put up, titled This Novel Will End, I'm starting to realize that I was exhausted because I had been writing a lot, but I was probably also extra exhausted because I was getting sick. I realize now that I was getting sick. And it's funny because my wife got sick ahead of me, and I thought that she got me sick. But when we analyzed the timeline, keeping in mind the strange source for my exhaustion a week prior, I think I was the original patient 0, and I might have gotten her sick. Isn't that silly? But anyhow, I missed the week. I got really sick, but I'm back. And it was funny. It wasn't funny. It was a little funny how I kept trying to get back to work, and then my wife would rightfully just push me to just stay in bed and rest. And over the course of days, I felt my human senses return, my ability to focus return, my desire to put words on the page return. That was most of my week last week. Ever since I got better, I've been getting back into writing. It's been one of those things where for like a good week, I just couldn't do any creative work. So once again, I have to build the momentum again. It's part of the cycle. I didn't stress out too much over it. The first couple of days that I was writing, it was a little hard. It was trying to find my footing and alternatively trying not to just break into a run because I am right at the end of this story. I am right at the end. And every word feels like it has a lot more weight than it usually does. And I know that all of this is going to get revised eventually. And by revised, I mean that it will get changed or moved, and some of it may be cut. Maybe none of it will, maybe all of it will, I don't know yet. But that story you already know. Writing's hard, and you gotta keep working at it. Every chance you have, sit down, get to work. And that's what we do. In case you're wondering as to what else I've been doing a lot of writing outside of the house, sometimes in coffee shops, sometimes in other places, and I've also been writing like just outside of my house. it's getting warm again over here in California. And I have discovered that at a certain point of the day, the porch is like the coolest, nicest place in the whole house to write, so I've been doing that. And I'm actually kind of looking forward to writing tomorrow because it means that I get to sit in that cool shade and just type away. But you may be wondering, just like one of our writerly friends was wondering, how do you write your novel outside of your house? You know, if you have a laptop or if you don't have a laptop, how can you possibly work on a novel outside? How do you create what I have coined as the mobile writing setup? I'm going to talk about that in the second question, but for now, I just wanted to slow down for a second and just slide a little something under your door. I have to admit that the story I am currently writing is very, very, very sad. It is very sad. And I have been listening to very sad music while writing because music helps me stay in the mood. And how do I say this? The subject matter is not heartbreaking or heart-shattering. It's a different kind of sadness. And since I'm right in the end of the story and I'm right in the middle of all these sad scenes, and in a way it's because of all these sad scenes and the things the characters have been saying, they have given me reason to have a little bit of introspection, a little bit of reflection. And I just wanted to take a second and say that I am so grateful for everyone who listens to this podcast. If you reach out and send questions, or if you don't, either way, I'm just glad that people are listening. And I am glad that maybe in my little way I can help you keep on writing. Okay? Okay. Sorry for getting a little touchy there, but I just wanted to get that off my chest. I've been thinking about that a lot, especially because writing is hard, but also because this story is just so sad. And it's forced me to reflect on this. So I wanted to say that. Okay? Now, before we move on with the second segment of the show, I do realize, and if you listen, you know, this is a part of the show where I talk about the people who make the show possible. And I realize that I would sound a little dishonest if I just went into that spiel after what I just said, so I'll just give you the blitz version of it. In the description of this video, you can find links to ways in which you can support me. And I want to just give the usual shout out to my biggest supporter, Rival Moonlight. He has a DeviantArt page. You can find out more about his writing and his work over at deviantart.com/Rival Moonlight. And so, with that out of the way, let's move over to the viewer questions. Every week, I take 2 questions from my comments, my email, my Tumblr page, my Twitter, from pretty much everywhere people send me comments, and I feature them on the show. Before I say anything else, though, I want to give you the big disclaimer that says that the following is merely just my advice, my opinion, and what works for me. We're beginning today's questions with a classic one, and one that I like to revisit very often. A dear viewer sent a question asking if I had any advice for writing the first sentence of a story. So let's do that, okay? Probably the biggest advice that I can give you if you're about to sit down and begin a new journey. And we all know that paralyzing fear when you find yourself before the blank page of a new tale. The first sentence is a microcosm of the struggles any writer faces when writing. And if there was one piece of advice that I could give you, if you could just take one thing from this, is to look at the first sentence a little differently. The sentiment that comes to mind is actually to loosen up a little bit. And I know No one in the history of the universe has been told to relax or to calm down and has actually done it. I know. Loosening up a little when you sit before that blank page really helps. Because I know, and we all do this, that when you look at that blank page in the very beginning, and I know because I'm going to be heading there soon. Once this novel's over, I will probably begin another one. And I will be there in the same seat that you are in right now. The first sentence feels like it carries so much weight. And in a way it does. But you must loosen up, take a deep breath, and remember, this is just the first draft. It needs not be perfect. It needs only exist. And if you know me, you know. The first third of the novel is what gets the most edits. I have rewritten, cut, sliced, spliced the first sentence, the first chapters of so many stories. There's a manuscript, there's a novel that I wrote last year, and when I got all the feedback from my beta readers, I knew. I knew we were heading there, and I knew I had tried so hard, and I had rewritten the first chapter, but I knew, when I got their notes, I knew that chapter is gonna get spliced again. It's gonna get changed. A part of me wants to just burn the whole thing down. Not the manuscript, just that first chapter. But no. That's me being dramatic. It's me being silly. I'll change it again, and I'll make it better. But that's me over here on my own path on this journey, the writing journey. What about you? Starting up for the first time, starting a new story, facing the blankness, facing the beginning. Like standing before an enormous canvas and holding in your hand palette and brush. Where do you begin? How can you begin? Let's assume you have already loosened up. Let's assume that you know and you have acknowledged and you know in your heart that this is just the first draft. And you can make mistakes. And you can write things even if you don't think they are the best. Even if you don't think it's your best work, you can still just write it. That's okay. So you know this to be true. You know this deep in your heart. You take a breath, a deep breath. But still the question remains. How do you begin a story? How does one write the first sentence? I have many ways to tackle this particular issue. And I think, in my experience at least, especially for stories that are first person, it helps to really get in the mind of whoever is telling the story. Again, in first-person stories, this is really effective because you know who they are. It's a character, it's a person. It's someone in the world, either someone retelling the story or someone right in the middle of everything. Not a witness, but one of the key players in this story. And in my experience, it helps to think of them, think of their story, think of who they are as a person, and ask myself, how would this character begin this story? How would they begin this tale? If they were writing this, or if they were telling this to someone in a dimly lit underground basement, in a bar, how would your character begin the story? Would they introduce themselves? Would they introduce the setting? Would they introduce the central antagonist? Would they just jump into the middle of things? And I know. I just gave you an outline of the many several ways in which you can begin a story. You can describe a location, you can describe a character, you can have the narrator introduce themselves, even if it is third person. There are ways in which you can simply begin the story. You could just have the story begin in the middle of action, in media res, one of my favorite ways to begin a story. But instead of just giving you a list, instead of just giving you a 6-sided die you can roll whenever you want to, I think it's better to begin with the point of view. How would this person begin the story? I think it helps. If you're wondering how I do it, that's it right there. I think of the narrator. More often than not, it's easy because they are the central character or someone who's pivotal to the story. And in the case of the stories that are third person, I try to put myself in the mind of whoever might be telling this story. And I know it's a very meta way to look at it, but that narrator is someone. It's a person, even if it's an invisible voice, a ghost from the past, a concept, an idea. Someone is narrating the story, and that begs the question, how does this individual tell a story? And that's really it. That's how I begin stories. Think of the narrator. Think of who's talking. Think of who is the one putting those words. And ask, how would this character begin the story? I have to be honest and admit that, although I'm not yet allowed to start writing any story, there is a seedling of an idea spinning, turning, growing in the back of my mind. And because I've done this so many times, I find myself thinking about this. Thinking about how the story is going to begin. How is this strange character going to begin the story? And I think I know. I've been thinking about it. It's probably still weeks, maybe months away before I get to even put the first words on the page. But I have an idea. And thinking about the narrator as a character, as a person who tells the story in their own particular way helps. If anything, because in the times when I don't know what to write next, I can always think to myself and say, well, what would the narrator say next? Okay? I hope this helps. Or if anything, I hope that I showed you another point of view. Let's move over to the second question of the day. A dear writerly friend was going through my old backlog of videos and noticed me talking about my mobile writing setup. I made a video about this a long time ago, and they were wondering if it had changed. So in order to talk about this on the podcast, I am going to explain what a mobile writing setup is and what mine looks like now. If you know me, you know that I love minimalism. I don't like to keep a lot of personal possessions, not because I'm a hipster or anything, it's really just because I don't like to haul a lot of things around. There was a good period of my life where I was moving like every 6 months, so I kind of prefer to just, have a light backpack. So why have a mobile writing setup? Why not just write at your desk every single day? Well, as someone who has been doing this for a living, and as someone who has lived in places where there wasn't much peace to be able to just sit down and tell stories, and I am certain this is something a lot of you can relate to, going outside to write just helps. You're in a different mind space. You are in a different location, hopefully one that is sometimes quieter, and at least, if anything, a little better than the place you have at home. And I can tell you, as someone who does this, that at one point you just really get tired of working at your desk. So sometimes I go out. Coffee shops, libraries. Probably your local library is like the best place to go and write because it's just so quiet. And who doesn't love the smell of books? I mean, come on, let's be real here. Now, when I go out and about and I'm writing, I definitely don't want to carry my whole writing equipment. I definitely don't want to carry an expensive laptop. Oh, by the way, in case anyone is wondering, this question is going to double as, hey Max, I want to get a computer for writing, what do you recommend? The short answer to that is something really cheap. If anything, because if you're writing out and about, there's always the possibility of something happening to your computer. And it would really suck if that computer was A, very expensive, and B, it was the one thing that contained every single thing that you have ever created. That right there seems to me like a time bomb. Now I'm being a little dramatic there. Mostly because I worry a lot, but also because I've been doing this for a while, and I have heard horror stories, and I have always strived to learn from others. Now you may be wondering, okay Max, I can't bring my writing setup, and I shouldn't bring an expensive laptop, which may be the only thing that I have. What should I bring instead? And please don't tell me that I have to spend a lot of money, to which I reply, nay. A couple years back, and they've gotten cheaper, so it's great, I spent $150 on a Chromebook, and that little Chromebook, that Acer Chromebook, has done wonders for me. In case you don't know, a Chromebook is a notebook computer that basically just runs the Chrome browser. These computers don't have a lot of processing power, mostly because they are just meant to run Chrome. Additionally, they are very cheap, and some are very durable. If you want more features in your Chromebook, you gotta spend more money, but I bought this $150 Chromebook like 4 years ago. I am certain they have got to be cheaper right now. And this is the only thing I take with me when I go out to write. Now, why just that? Why just a Chromebook? And the thing is this. If all I am going to be doing is writing, then all I need is a device that writes, that stores this writing in the cloud, and that's pretty much it. That's all you need, really. Someone was reaching out to me, because I told them, get a Chromebook. And they replied to me and told me, okay, well, what do you recommend to get in a Chromebook? And let's get back to the first note of this conversation. I am a minimalist. I don't like to have a lot of things. My Chromebook is just a Chromebook. To write, I use Google Docs. And the only extensions that I have are offline Google Docs, so that I can create files offline, so that even if I am at a place that doesn't offer free Wi-Fi, I can still create documents, and whenever I return to a place that has Wi-Fi, those will be uploaded to the cloud, and thus my writing will be saved. The only other extension is an extension titled Distraction-Free Mode for Google Docs. It's a little button that you press when you're in Google Docs, and it changes from that god-awful Microsoft Word aesthetic, and it just becomes the same aesthetic that you have seen in distraction-free writing programs like Calmly, like Focuswriter. It's perfect. Chromebook, Google Docs offline, and distraction-free mode for Google Docs. That's it. That's all I need. And in case you're wondering, is there more options? Is there something else that I could do? I have looked into many things. But at the end of the day, I look back at what I have, and I ask myself, do I need anything else? And the answer is no. This here, like I want to just grab it. It doesn't mean anything. You can't see it. But like that Chromebook is all I take with me. I take it and I go to write. Some days I just have it under my arm and I just go. And that's pretty much it, honestly. Like, I like this question because a couple weeks back I had another question with another writerly friend who was asking me about, what's the best computer to get if you want to just do writing in it. And we had a back and forth conversation in DMs on Twitter. And, listen, I don't want to say I want you to save money, but, there are very expensive laptops that I have a lot of trouble recommending if all you want to do is writing. Because if all you want to do is writing, just spend $150 on a Chromebook and you're good to go. And the keyboard on that Chromebook is way better than the keyboard on all of the MacBook Pros right now. And that's a shame. Because I used to have a MacBook Pro and I used to do all my work on it. That right there was a workhorse. All of my original videos were rendered and edited on that machine. But that machine died. And the new machines have terrible, terrible keyboards. It's a shame when my Chromebook from 4 years ago that doesn't have an aluminum body, has a plastic body, has a better keyboard. And I've written 3 novels on it. It's silly. It's silly that this Chromebook has no right to have such a good keyboard. So, if you've been looking into doing a little bit of writing outside of the home, writing on the bus, writing in the little breaks that you have in between classes at the library, but you don't want to bring your big expensive laptop with you, I would recommend looking into a Chromebook. They are pretty cheap, and if you want, something more high-end, you can spend a couple more $100. I do recommend that you check at a store that has them so you can get a feel for the keyboard, because it would be a shame to spend a lot of money on a computer where ultimately that keyboard's not going to last you very long. Especially because, let's be real, if the purpose of the machine is to write, it better be ready to handle a little bit of punishment. Okay? Okay. Thank you for the writerly friend who reached out, who wanted to see how I go about writing outside. If you have your own thoughts and opinions, please let us know in the comments of the video version of this podcast or reach out to me through email. I have been really bad at bringing up that point, but if you ever have anything you want to say, in the description of this video there should be a link to my email, so you can let me know what you thought about my points, bring up your own counterpoints, or bring up something that you think I might have completely missed. Now, let's see. I did my update. I did the 2 questions. It must be time to talk about today's prompt. A weird creative writing exercise. Today's is not so weird. I've had a change of heart. Not so much. I wanted to do something a little different today. But before, let me establish the way that this segment of the show works. Every week, I come at you with a weird, bizarre, or sometimes just a writing exercise, such as today. And it is your task to think about writing, to imagine what you would do, and if you have the time, maybe even work on it. You're free to do as you wish with the prompts that you see here. The instant you start working on them, they become yours and they cease to be mine. If you are a little short on time, you can just go to the video version of this and let me know what you would have done in the comments. And that right there is the halfway mark of this part of the show. If you want to hear what I would do, what I would have done, or how I would have tackled a particular exercise, you have to wait until next week for me to cover it in the recap. Every week, I also do a little recap of the previous prompt. I shout out a couple people in the comments of the video who talked about what they would have done. I cover a little bit of the stuff I got in my email, and of course I tell you about what I would have done with the prompt. Let us begin today with a simple prompt, but a good one. I realized that I haven't done a prompt like this in a really, really long while. So let's have a little bit of fun. This here is not particularly... It doesn't enable you to write a whole scene about it, but I mean, if you feel like it, go right ahead. I want you all listening to this to picture the central cast for the story you're working on. And we all know you're working on a story right now. Let's imagine the central cast, and I want you to go character by character, and I want you to not only answer the question for every character and imagine how it would go for them, but also think about the implications. What does this mean for them? It's a seemingly simple question, but I think that if you stop and think about it for a little bit, it can help you learn something more about your characters, or if anything, reinforce the things you already know. That right there is the power of a character exercise, and today we're going to have a simple one that all of us can enjoy. A classic character question. How do your characters have fun? How do your characters have fun? Think about it. I think that this is a especially important prompt for stories where all the characters are caught in a cataclysmic event, or in a war, or something that prevents them from seeking their own passions. If they lived in a time of peace, if they lived in a different world, if things were just not so screwed up, how would they relax? How would they unwind? How would they have fun? How would they enjoy their time? Go character by character and think about it. Imagine them. How would your characters have fun? Okay? That right there is your homework. That right there is what I want you to think about. Feel free to pause the podcast if you are suddenly struck by a deluge of thoughts and ideas. Okay? And if you feel ever so inclined, let me know. Let me know if you learned something new about them, or if it reinforced something that you knew all along. Okay? Okay. And now, for the very last part of the show, let's turn the clock back a couple weeks back. My God, it's been a little while. Sorry for keep you all waiting. I talked about a weird story idea, and I want to tell you where it came from, because sometimes story ideas, sometimes I find them. Sometimes I hear something in the midst of living, and I think to myself, ooh, that would be a fun thing to do. Or I hear a story about someone, and I think about it, and I twist it, and I turn it, and I think to myself, ooh, that would be a fun thing to write about. The prompt from episode 37 is weird. The whole prompt, if you don't remember, was to write a story where the narrator introduces themselves halfway through the story, or at a point that is not the beginning. So we're talking about a story where the narration begins as normal. It describes things, and it talks about people, and it portrays their dialogue, but somewhere along the story, the beginning, the middle, just right at the end, the narrator introduces themselves. And that right there was the prompt. No color, all just technical things. At one point, the narrator introduces themselves. Where did this come from? Well, I must admit that I was doing a little bit of thinking on that story, that little seedling of an idea in the back of my mind. An idea for a story that is probably what I'm gonna write next, unless something gets in the way. So, it's most likely going to, because life sure knows how to get in the way. I was thinking about that story, and the narrator has been the most exciting thing, and I'm always so happy when I'm lucky enough to find a good narrator, someone who just propels me to keep on writing. And this story, as it stands, will end up being not a mystery story, but a story about a mystery, about questions, about a mastermind, about a game master. A story about someone who has all the answers to your questions, but I don't particularly think that they feel inclined to share all of them. This character who has slowly taken shape in my mind. I know now that what I found through this prompt is not true anymore. But at one point I thought, well, wouldn't it be funny if halfway through the story, the narrator turned to the camera for all intents and purposes and said, "Yeah, that's me right there. In case you're wondering, that has been me all along. I am the traitor amongst the survivors. None of them know that I am the mastermind. Isn't that a treat?" And I can feel myself falling into that voice. That voice right there is the voice of the narrator. That's their voice. And I know because of the little brainstorming that I've done here and there, in between, sometimes in between me putting on makeup in the morning, and sometimes in the instant right before I fall asleep. Little bits of world building, and I don't think they're gonna do that twist again. I don't think so. Maybe they will. I don't know. Listen, the world's full of surprises. But that right there was a beginning, a landmark moment for this story, where I thought, wouldn't it be funny? Wouldn't it be fun if halfway through the story there was a reveal like that? Suddenly things that the narration was doing make sense. Hints of character and color now make absolute sense when you realize that the narrator for the story has been this one person the whole time. And the implications ripple outwards from that moment. Like a disaster. Just thinking about it. Feels so good. This is the fun in stories, in thinking about stories, and imagining them, asking, what would you do? How would you tackle it? A part of me, I think, throughout that prompt, as a way to get that thought out of my head, that moment in that story, that may or may not happen. I don't know. I don't think it will, but that's okay. Maybe it will inspire you to create something fun. And if you do, you should let me know. I wanted to make a post about this, but I have been unable to find the words. And maybe today I will, here with my own voice, as I lean a little closer to the microphone. I want you to keep having fun while writing. To never let it become a chore. Whenever you feel that sense that the writing is not fun, make it fun, twist it, return to the fountain, this imaginary place from which we draw joy. What is your fountain filled with? What are the things that bring you joy in storytelling? Sometimes we stray from the path. Sometimes in an attempt to put words on the page, we lose focus. We lose sight. Never stop having fun with your stories. Go back to the fountain, to this mythical place where inspiration overflows outwardly, springing to the sun and falling down into a pool of waters from which we can always drink, no matter how tired, no matter how stressed, no matter how dark the days may seem. You should always have fun writing. You can always go back to the fountain. And so, welcome back to episode 38 of my writing advice and inspiration podcast, OMAKASE. I hope that today you had fun listening to my podcast. I hope that maybe I showed you another point of view, but at the end of it all, I hope that I was good company during your drive to work, your walks with your dog, that slice of time you have between classes. Or the quiet moments once you're home and right before you get started with writing. I hope I was good company. I hope you have a lovely day wherever you are, and I hope that between now and the next time we meet, that you get some writing done. Okay? Okay. I am going to step over to the shoutouts. I like to give a shout out to every single person who helps me continue to create this podcast week to week. You don't have to tag along. This is usually where the silly part of the show begins, and where I'm not allowed to do any edits. So, as you can see from me stumbling on my words, the silliness starts now. You don't have to tag along. Thank you for listening. Goodbye. Goodbye. And so, hey guys, how y'all doing? Yes, I know that I said do the show week to week, but I missed a week last week. Okay, listen. I'm getting back, okay? And I love doing this podcast. That's the one thing that I want to get across. It wasn't easy for me to skip a week. I want you to understand this. I was so sick, and I had one day to get good before... I had one day to feel better again. Because I only had one recording day last week, because last week was hell. And guess what? I didn't feel good that other day. I was like, I've been sick for exactly 4 days, and colds are supposed to last 5 to 10 days. So, unless I get amazingly, miraculously healthy tomorrow, there will be no podcast. And lo and behold, there was no podcast. And I want to say, first and foremost, thank you to everyone who sent sweet messages on Twitter. Thank you so much, you guys. I feel so bad about missing weeks, but you were all so sweet, and I will absolutely admit that it was thanks to your support and your kind words that I was able to get over that and make a swift recovery. With that being said, I want to just give a shout out to every single person supporting me, either through coffee.com/amkaren or patreon.com/amkaren. Coffee is the #1 place to support me, but if you want early access to the podcast, you can also do it through Patreon by pledging at least $1 a month. First off, let's begin with cups of coffee. The following are the lovely people who treated me to cups of coffee through coffee.com/amkaren, beginning with Lishadra, Angela, Kristen Lofton, Polly Craftwall, Vic, and, I didn't forget about you, Daz Danya. Thank you so much for your support. I hope I got your last name right. I haven't butchered a name in a long while, so I hope I got your last name good there, Daz. Thank you for your support. And now, while there's 10,000 planes overhead, let's go through Patreon shoutouts. Patreon.com/amkaren, you know the dealio. Let's begin with Rival Moonlight, Solmius, Lacey, Irina Phoenix, A. Howard, Elisa Dudley, Heather is Writing, Nicola, Brenda, Amelia, Pat Eichson, Melanie Ashford. Oh man, that's a good man. I'm not saying Melanie Ashford's name is good because it's better than everyone else. I mean, it's really good because it's really fun to say phonetically. As someone who was raised, or as someone whose primary language was Spanish, I can tell you, and I grew up, in Mexico, and we spoke, Spanish or Castellano over there, which is the name of that dialect, and in Spanish, phonetics make sense. An A is pronounced everywhere. That never changes. There's one exception to the rule, and that's words that have the little 2 dots on top of it. I forget what those are called now. But really, that only affects the word for penguin and nothing else. So in Spanish, everything always makes sense. And if anything, that's why I found Japanese to be so comforting, because everything sounds the same all the time. That being said, there's a little bit of an interplay with sounds in English, mostly because it's a mishmash of 3 different languages, that sometimes you end up with this almost melodic play of words, and I'm reminded of it a lot with Melanie Ashford. Like, going from the hard sh sound to the f of Ford feels good. Feels like a song. Melanie Ashford. Like the shift into a bridge in a song. Anyhow, there you go. Man, high-level commentary. Do I know anything about music? No. Do I have interest in music? I have like the trashiest taste in music. I basically listen to everything because as part of my writing journey, I just gather a huge collection of every music in case that I need it for something. It's really as simple as that. Shiro Tsubasa. Alex Cast. Cast is also a very good phonetic name. It's just very fun to say. Like Alistair Baywood. Caitlin Blarg. Kameshwar Rao Shaluri. Kathy Lindsay. Kaylee. Mary Foster Smith. Juan Nunes. Raquel Fernandez. Sylvia Leitilla. Oh, that's right. Did you see how I just transitioned back into giving shoutouts? It's one of my many abilities. Mostly because I've done this so many times. Janosch Heibotsky. Sky D. White. Eleanor. Renee Solia. Connor. Jay Sawicki. Rhiannon August. Nicolay. J. Tana Kirkwood. James. Erasos. Erasos. No, see, okay, listen. I'm leaning too close to the microphone to do like the 3 exclamation marks. So for today, let's just say Erasos, ! Noam Sahar, Novels and Tomes, Kiel. That sound in the background, if you can hear it, is my chinchillas drinking water. Roa, Lear Killo, Clem Pastor, Nicole Grissom, Biting the Sun, Christiane. That's another fun name to say. Shimmer Tales. Did I already say Noam Sahar? Because Noam Sahar is fun to say too. Yeah, I already did. Shimmer Tales. Amanda Stevens. C.E. Richards. Zero Woods. K.M. Anderson. And last but by no means least, Alexo Hoshi. Hey guys. How are you all doing today? I've been having a wild time over here in my little part of California. The heat's back, so that's not good. Can you imagine? It was hot and I was sick. What kind of injustice is this? How? Yeah, I know. Woe is me. I know. First world problems and all that stuff. I know, absolutely. But that being said, I'm feeling healthy. I'm feeling good again. I'm healthy again. I'm ready to get back to writing. And it was good because I had a couple of days off back to back. And today is my recording day for the week. And from there on, there's nothing but writing ahead. And there's a good chance that I'm going to finish the book this week. And that is scary. And that feels good. And I am excited. I'm going to end up writing like 20,000 words this week. I know it. I didn't wake up early this morning. I'm not going to lie to you. I didn't wake up early. But I felt like I could have woken up early if today had been a writing day. But today was a recording day. And I'm like, the podcast will get done. I know it will. So I slept in a little bit. But tomorrow, I am certain tomorrow I'm going to wake up early. I'm going to wake up early. Gonna grab that Chromebook. Gonna walk out and get those words done. I hope that you too go out, sometimes out of our own heads, out of the box, out of the rut we have been for a long while, and spring into the writing. Get back into putting words on the page, no matter how hard it seems, no matter how elusive those words may be. Sit down and keep telling your story, okay? And remember, today is a good day to write.